evening, an old bus pulled into the worn-down stop. On the edge of town, a frail elderly man stepped off slowly, deep wrinkles, a weathered hat, and the eyes of someone who had been waiting a very, very long time. He stood at the entrance of the village, looking around as if the past were rising from the ground itself, and whispered softly, "After all these years, I've finally come back." Whispers rippled through the small crowd nearby. "Is that really him? That father who disappeared 30 years ago? I thought he was dead." The father had returned. No warning, no explanation, just 30 years of silence behind him. And suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Why did he disappear and why return now? Now, we begin the story of the secret he carried back with him. Lakewood, a quiet Midwestern town where the evenings grow dark a little too early. That night, after 30 long years, Thomas Mason stepped back into his family's home, and the entire house fell into a heavy, uneasy silence. Ella Mason, 47, sat on the edge of the living room sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had worked as a nurse at the local community hospital for decades. Since the day her father disappeared, she had cared for her ill mother, raised her younger brother, Liam, and shouldered every responsibility this home demanded. She never allowed herself the luxury to fall apart. Liam Mason, now 42, had carried his anger like a shadow, and the moment Thomas walked through the door, that shadow erupted. "Why are you here? What do you want after 30 years? His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from a wound he had kept open for decades. Ella quickly reached for his arm. "Liam, please let him speak." But Liam shook her off. "No, Ella, he abandoned us. A man who leaves like that isn't a father." Thomas finally lifted his eyes. There was regret in them, but also something deeper. Fear, a fear he couldn't hide. "I'm sorry, both of you," he whispered. "I wanted to come home. I truly did." Ella felt her breath tremble. Those were the words she had wanted to hear her entire life. Yet somehow they filled her with more questions, not comfort. "Dad, where were you all this time?" Her voice was soft, cautious, but Thomas lowered his gaze. "I can't tell you yet." That was all it took for Liam to explode again. "Still, 30 years, and you still can't say anything." Ella glanced at her father's hands, worn, scarred, aged by labor and survival. They didn't look like the hands of a man who had run away from his family. They looked like the hands of someone who had been fighting or protecting something. And then it happened. A small photograph slipped out of Thomas's old travel bag and landed by Ella's foot. He reached for it quickly, far too quickly. That single, frantic movement sent a cold shiver through her. There was a truth in this house, a truth her father was terrified to reveal. The next morning, Lakewood was wrapped in a cold, early autumn stillness. Ella had barely slept. She sat alone in the kitchen, warming the same cup of coffee over and over, her mind replaying every moment from the night before, especially the photograph. The way Thomas lunged to hide it, too fast, too frantic, told her one thing. Whatever was in that picture was something he feared, more than being found. When she was sure he was still asleep, Ella quietly unlatched his worn leather travel bag. It wasn't the bag of a traveler. It was the bag of a man who had been running for a very long time. Inside, she found wrinkled shirts, a half-empty bottle of medication, and a small metal box with a broken latch. Inside that box lay several loose papers, a hospital wristband with the name rubbed off, and the old photograph from last night. Ella lifted it carefully. In the picture, a much younger Thomas stood beside a woman Ella had never seen before, and a small boy clinging to her hand. The three of them weren't smiling. If anything, their expressions were tense, almost frightened. Behind them stood a run-down roadside motel. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, was a single sentence. "Someday, I'll make this right." Ella felt her chest tighten. "Dad, who are these people?" The question didn't leave her lips, but it echoed inside her like a bell. Just then, a soft creak startled her. Ella quickly hid the photo as the living room door opened. It was Liam. His eyes were red, exhausted, as if he too had spent the night wrestling with memories he didn't want. "Ella," he whispered. "I asked Dad again where he's been, why he came back." Liam shook his head. He didn't say a word. Ella remained silent, not because she didn't want to speak, but because something inside her was shifting. For the first time, she was more curious than angry. Liam slammed his hand lightly on the table. "Don't tell me you're falling for this again." He left, Ella. He ran. That's all there is. "No." Ella shook her head slowly. "This time is different. Dad isn't just guilty. He's terrified." "Terrified?" Liam scoffed. "Of what?" "Getting caught." Ella hesitated, because the man in the photograph didn't look like someone hiding from his own mistakes. He looked like a man protecting someone, with everything he had left. Liam sank into a chair, voice barely a breath. "Ella, there's something I never told you." He paused. "That night Dad disappeared. The police came to talk to Mom, and after that, she never said his name again." Ella froze. Her mother's last words came rushing back. "If your father ever returns, don't be the one to punish him." Suddenly, that sentence felt different. Not a plea, but a warning. Ella turned toward Liam. "Liam, we need to look at Dad again. Not with anger this time, with eyes wide open." But as she spoke, she felt something shift outside the window. A brief shadow, a presence watching. Ella shivered. Whatever Thomas was hiding, it wasn't just a family secret. Someone in Lakewood didn't want that truth uncovered. That afternoon, a heavy gray sky settled over Lakewood. The air felt colder than usual, as if the whole town sensed something was coming. Ella tried to focus during her hospital shift, but the worn photograph and the metal box kept replaying in her mind like an unfinished sentence. When she finally returned home, she found Liam standing on the porch, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Behind him, a few neighbors lingered, whispering. "What happened?" Ella asked. Liam exhaled sharply. "Ella, the whole town knows Dad's back, and you know how Lakewood is. They're already spinning stories." As if on cue, an elderly neighbor passed by, murmuring, "I heard he left because of trouble years ago. Someone said he was running from the law." "And that woman in the picture, who was she?" Ella didn't feel shame. She felt dread. A cold, creeping dread that whispered, "This isn't just gossip. This is danger." Inside the house, Thomas sat by the living room window, staring outside with an intensity Ella had never seen before. Not like a man looking out, but like a man watching for someone. "Dad," Ella said softly, "people are talking. If there's something we need to know, you have to tell us." He didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the street. "Ella," he whispered, "where's Liam?" "Right here," Liam snapped. "Why? Who are you expecting?" Thomas swallowed hard. "Both of you don't go out tonight." His voice shook, not with age, but with fear. Liam stepped forward. "I'm done with this. Tell us the truth. Are you running from someone?" Thomas flinched. A small, involuntary movement that told Ella everything. "Liam, if I talk now, you'll be in danger." Ella felt something inside her crack. He kept saying it was for their safety, but without the truth, those words meant nothing. Then, headlights flashed through the window. A car slowed to a stop right in front of the house. The engine idled low, vibrating through the walls, and in the dim light, a shadowed figure sat motionless. looking straight toward them. Ella's breath hitched. "Dad, who is that?" Thomas froze. His expression hardened, not surprised, but resigned. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "They don't want me here." Ella and Liam exchanged a terrified look. It was no longer just a family mystery. It was becoming a threat. A real one. That night, Lakewood felt unnaturally still. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that presses against the windows and lingers in the corners of a house. Ella sat at the dining table, hearing her father's earlier warning over and over. "Don't go outside tonight." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning. Liam paced the living room restlessly, while Thomas remained by the window, his eyes fixed on the street, as if expecting something, or someone. Suddenly, Thomas flinched and stepped back from the glass. "They're here again." His voice was barely a whisper, but the fear in it was unmistakable. Ella rushed to the window. A dark grey SUV sat idling on the narrow street, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. It didn't move. It didn't honk. It simply watched. "Who is that?" Ella whispered. "Dad, who are they?" Thomas covered his face with trembling hands. "So they found me after all." Liam snapped. "Found you? Why? Why are people parking outside our house?" "Dad!" For the first time, Thomas's voice cracked. "Stay away from the window, both of you. If they know I'm alive, you won't be safe." Ella felt her stomach drop. "Alive? What are you talking about?" "They think I'm dead," Thomas said quietly, "and they need to keep believing that." Before Ella could respond, the SUV's door clicked open. A man in a long black coat stepped out. The street was silent, so silent that the sound of his shoes touching the pavement echoed like footsteps in a hallway. He approached the mailbox, slipped a small envelope inside, and walked back without ever looking up. Moments later, the SUV vanished down the road. Liam darted toward the door. "I'm checking this." "No!" Thomas cried, but Liam was already outside. He came back with the envelope, breathing hard. No return address, no name, just a single handwritten message. "We know he's back." Ella felt her legs weaken. Liam looked at both of them, horror widening his eyes. "This isn't for us. This is for Dad." Thomas closed his eyes, his voice trembling as he spoke. "They won't stop now. They never stop." The quiet Midwestern night no longer felt familiar. It felt threatened, and the shadows outside felt dangerously close. Night settled heavily over Lakewood, but the darkness felt different now. Thicker, tense, almost alive. Ella's fingertips were icy cold. Liam paced the living room like a trapped animal, anger simmering beneath every breath. And Thomas, he sat at the kitchen table, his hands trembling uncontrollably. The message in the mailbox, "We know he's back," hung over them like a storm cloud. Finally, Liam snapped. "Dad, we can't live like this. People are watching our house, dropping threats in our mailbox, and we don't even know who they are." Thomas's voice shook. "Liam, please. I can't explain. Not yet. Not yet." Liam's voice cracked with frustration. "Dad, look at us. Look at Ella. We're scared out of our minds. Tell us who these people are." Ella gently held her father's trembling hand. "Dad, secrecy isn't protecting us. It's putting us in more danger." But Thomas shook his head, eyes shut tight. "If you knew the truth, you could die because of it." The room fell silent. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to disappear. Ella whispered, "Dad, why would we die? What did you do? Who's coming after you?" Then, a car screeched to a stop outside. Doors slammed. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Ella and Liam rushed to the window. The grey SUV had returned. This time, two men stepped out. One wore a long black coat, The other held a small radio, murmuring into it. Liam whispered, "Oh God, Ella, these guys aren't amateurs." Ella felt her soul drop. This wasn't just a shadow from the past. This was active danger. Thomas suddenly stood. His face was pale, but there was a fierce resolve in his eyes. "Don't look away," he ordered. "Watch them closely." "Dad, what are you doing?" Ella cried. "I'm going out there," Thomas said. "They want me. I can't let them touch either of you." Ella grabbed his arm. "No. If you walk out that door." Thomas looked at her with a father's heartbreak. A family shouldn't pay for one man's mistakes. Then, thud, 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 someone knocked on the door. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Liam stepped in front of Thomas. "Who is it?" he shouted. A calm, cold voice came from the other side. "Thomas Mason, we need to talk." Ella felt her pulse stop. The time for secrets was over. The knocking at the front door no longer sounded like a visitor. It sounded like danger with a fist, pounding its way into their lives. Thud, thud, thud. The entire house vibrated with each strike. Ella stood frozen between her father and Liam, her breath tight in her chest. Liam gripped the door as if holding back a flood. "Who are you? Why are you threatening us?" he shouted. A calm, controlled voice replied from the other side. The voice of a man who'd done this many times before. "Thomas Mason, hand over the file. Let's end this quietly." Ella felt her stomach twist. A file. That's what this was all about. Not abandonment, not a secret family, but something Thomas had been guarding for 30 years. Liam yelled, "What file? What are you talking about?" The door handle twitched. Someone outside was trying to turn it. Ella grabbed Liam's arm. "Don't let go. Don't let them in." Liam braced himself harder against the door. Then, Thomas rose to his feet, his voice low and resigned. "Ella, Liam, I can't hide it any longer." He reached into his worn jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. It was old, scratched, yet untouched by time. On the faded label were the words, "Case 17 Witness File." Ella stared at it, barely breathing. "Dad, is this what they want?" Thomas nodded slowly. "It belonged to a woman I tried to protect. She begged me to keep it safe." Ella's voice cracked. "The woman in the photograph?" "Yes," Thomas whispered. "And her son?" Liam shook his head in disbelief. "Dad, why now? Why after all these years?" Thomas' eyes filled with anguish. "Because the men who hunted her never went away, and they believe what's on this drive can destroy them." A violent bang shook the door. Bam! The wood splintered. Dust fell from the frame. The voice outside grew sharper. "Thomas Mason, this is your final warning. Open the door." Ella felt a scream rising in her throat. "Dad, we have to call the police." "No," Thomas said immediately. "If the police come, you two will be caught in the crossfire." Liam's voice trembled with rage. "Then what do we do? We're trapped." Thomas placed the USB in Ella's hand. His touch was firm. "Final. You must take this." Ella shook her head violently. "No, you have to come with us. You can't stay here." Thomas finally raised his voice. For the first time that night, "Listen to me." Ella froze. Liam fell silent. Thomas' eyes were wet but unwavering. "They want me, not you. If I step outside, you'll have a chance to get away. Dad, don't." Liam's voice cracked. Thomas lifted a trembling hand and touched his son's shoulder, a gesture 30 years overdue. Then, bam, bam, the door frame began to split. Cold air seeped in through the widening cracks. Ella clutched the USB as realization washed over her. Something was going to break. Someone was going to fall. And the truth was about to explode. Thomas took one last breath. It's time to end this. The door shook so violently, it seemed ready to split in half. Thomas lifted his head, not like a man running, but like a man finally ready to be seen. Ella whispered through tears, "Dad, please. If we're going to survive this, we need the truth." Thomas gently closed Ella's fingers around the USB drive. "Ella, the story you think you know about our family was never the whole story." He took a trembling breath. "The woman in that photograph, she wasn't my lover. She was a victim, a target. And the little boy beside her," he paused, voice breaking, "was your other brother." Ella staggered backward. What? We had a younger brother." Liam's lips parted, but no sound came out. Thomas continued, slowly, painfully, "I was a police officer back then. Case 17. A major investigation into one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country." Ella swallowed hard. "Dad, you were a cop?" "Yes. And she, the woman in the photograph, begged me to protect her son." Liam's voice cracked. "So you disappeared to protect a child?" Thomas nodded. "She was killed shortly after. I became the last living witness, and that organization began hunting me, and anyone close to me." Ella covered her mouth, realizing the weight of every year of his absence. "Dad, the boy, did he survive?" Thomas's eyes dropped. When he spoke, it was barely a breath. "No, I wasn't fast enough. They found him first." Ella felt her knees weaken. Liam turned pale. Thomas wiped his face with shaking hands. "That's why they want this." He pointed at the USB. "It holds the last remaining evidence of what they did. They believe I can still destroy them." He motioned toward a dusty picture frame on the wall. Behind it was a hidden metal box. Inside were old documents, hospital records, and a photograph of the boy, the younger brother they never knew they had. Ella whispered, This is why you ran." Thomas nodded. "For 30 years. I wasn't hiding from my family. I was hiding to protect it." Then, crack, the door frame split open. Ella finally understood. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He had gone to war for them, against an enemy that had just arrived at their doorstep. The door shuddered violently, but inside the house, the atmosphere trembled even more. The truth had detonated like a bomb. The child Thomas tried to protect, the murdered woman, the files, the past that tore their family apart. Ella could barely find her voice. "Dad, you carried all of this alone. You didn't abandon us. You saved us." Thomas lowered his head. "I couldn't let you or Liam step into that darkness. It was the only choice I had left." Liam stared at the USB drive, realization sinking into his bones. "So this is what destroyed our family, not you." Thomas nodded slowly. "The men outside are criminals. You too. You were collateral damage. And I'm sorry." Ella's eyes glistened. "I spent years hating you, and none of it was real." Before Thomas could answer, a sharp voice pierced through the walls. "Thomas Mason, last warning." Ella shot up from her seat. "Who are you people? Why are you doing this to us? This is our home." Liam yanked her back. "Ella, get away from the window." A small rock struck the glass with a hard thud. Not enough to break it, just enough to say, "Stay quiet." Ella trembled, not from fear alone, but from anger, from clarity, from finally knowing the truth. She turned to her father. "Dad, you protected us for 30 years. Now it's our turn." Thomas looked stunned. "No, you shouldn't be part of this. You need to leave now." But Ella shook her head firmly. "No, we're not running anymore. We know who's right and who's wrong." Liam stepped beside her. "She's right. If you were a witness, then we stand with you." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted you involved. Not like this. Ella gently touched his arm. We're family. That's what family does. Just then, a car door slammed outside. Heavy footsteps approached the house. Slow, deliberate. Ella and Liam looked at each other. They were scared, terrified, but united. For the first time in 30 years, the line between good and evil was unmistakably clear, and they were standing on the right side. The footsteps outside no longer sounded threatening. Ella and Liam stood beside their father, united at last. For 30 years, Thomas had faced this fight alone, but now, they stood together. The voice outside called again, "Thomas Mason, open the door." This time, Thomas walked toward the door, with no fear in his steps. Ella tried to stop him. Liam reached for his arm, but Thomas smiled, a tired, gentle smile. "Don't worry, I'm not running anymore." When he opened the door, the sudden wail of police sirens echoed through Lakewood. Blue lights swept across the street. As squad cars surrounded the SUV, officers rushed forward. "Freeze! Hands up!" The man in the black coat lifted his hands in shock. The man with the radio tried to flee, but was instantly taken down. Ella stared at her father. "Dad, how?" Thomas exhaled softly. "The envelope you found." There was a number scribbled on the corner. A distress code from years ago. "I used it." Ella covered her mouth. "So you called for help?" "Yes." Thomas nodded. "I ran for 30 years to protect you, but now that you're standing with me, I don't have to run anymore." A detective approached. "Mr. Mason, the evidence you preserved is the missing key to case 17. With this, we can finally bring that organization down." Thomas closed his eyes, relief washing over his face, like a long-awaited sunrise. Ella gently took his hand. "Come home with us, Dad." Liam stepped closer, voice trembling. "We're family. We live this life together now." The criminals were handcuffed and led into the patrol cars. The SUV was impounded. The threat that shadowed them for decades was finally ending. Thomas stepped onto the porch and breathed deeply, his first peaceful breath in 30 years. "It's over," he whispered. "I'm home." Ella and Liam sat beside him, their silhouettes touching under the soft Midwestern morning light. No more running, no more secrets, just a father and his children, together again, under the same sky. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back with another heartfelt story next time. And if you'd like to support this channel, your subscription, likes, and notification bell truly mean the world to me.